prompts, right?
Oh yeah, let me come up. Can I come up there?
Yeah,
Yes.
Sean's
Okay.
going to come up.
What?
So Sean's going to talk about this, but he's also just going to start off by demoing it. What Sean needs, as I'm introducing him.
Yeah. So
Here, you're gonna lead.
I'll just. Hi, I'm Sean. This is my pre-introduction. Woohoo! While Ben introduces me, I'm going to show you a little bit of what I do, which is I have a typewriter here, and I do free poems on any topic. Could somebody give me a topic that I could write a quick poem about? Yes, right there. Duran. Go 80s, all right.
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
Good luck, typewriter boy. Okay, here we go. All right, so Sean Petrie is a poet, an author, and a professor, because no one can do one thing anymore, right? But as you're seeing, he is very good at doing more than one thing at once. As a founder of Austin's Typewriter Rodeo, he's written more than 20,000 poems for people all across the country. He also does weekly radio poems for NPR and is the author of several books for kids and adults. With the other side of his brain, Sean teaches legal writing at the University of Texas Law School. Yeah, right? Like this and that. All of us are just trying to use 10% of our brain. He's using 110%. Notable, he also owns too many typewriters. He did his undergrad at UT, where he started Camp Texas, law school at Stanford. Come on, man, now you're showing off. He has an MFA in writing for kids from Vermont College. Glad you threw the Northeast in there, just to be inclusive. And he lives in Bolden Creek. He resides, which is it? You reside in Crestview or Bolden Creek?
Bolden Creek, I don't know where Crestview.
I don't know where you're. Oh, you know what that is? That's last month's speaker.
Oh, yeah.
Copy paste.
So is Stanford and the
You
law
also
stuff.
don't
Yeah,
have
just
a
put
wife
all that
and
in. Yeah.
2 children, so that's wrong.
Right. Oh, didn't know
So
that.
no, he lives in Bolden Creek, here to share his thoughts on the intersection of creativity and vibrant and poetry. Please welcome Sean Petrie.
Thank you. Oh yeah. Should I use this? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. So really quick, what was your name? Suzanne. All right. Suzanne Duran. Duran. Oh Rio, you are my song. In the shower, I sing along. But sometimes also when I feel aloof, I howl like I'm hungry, like the wolf. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming. My name is Sean Petrie. I am a writer, a poet, a teacher, and I am part of a group called Typewriter Rodeo that does what you just saw. We do spontaneous poems. People give us topics on typewriters all over the country. And it's one of the most amazing creative things that I've ever gotten to do. But I have not always been a creative writer, much less a poet. When I was in 5th grade, or the summer before 5th grade, we moved from Columbus, Ohio, to Dallas. And there was one Dallas person out here, actually a suburb of Dallas, Flower Mound, Texas. It was a big move, right? Luckily for me, back then I was really good at sports. I was really fast, had good balance, the moves, all that stuff. I was good at football, which was a great way to fit in, to find a place that I belonged pretty quickly. Back then, suburb of Dallas, it's a big thing, right? I remember I started out playing pee-wee football, went on up through middle school and in high school, and pretty quickly I was a starter on our varsity football team. I was the starting running back. I was the starting kick returner on our high school varsity team. And I hated it. I'm not sure exactly what it was. I've gone back to try and figure that out. It wasn't like the physical part, the contact part. Parts of that I kind of liked. But I just didn't like the game. Like, it didn't call to me, right? I liked the phrase that Brian used earlier when he was reading the manifesto, like, made you feel more alive, right? For me, football was kind of the opposite of that. I didn't like the game, didn't like the mindset, and I don't know what it was. It's like some people like vanilla ice cream, some like chocolate, some like Cherry Garcia, right? Whatever it is, it wasn't my thing. But it was what I was expected to do. It was what I was really good at, right? So that was a hard thing for me to figure out back then. So what I did is, at 15, I was not strong enough to just say, I'm done, I walk away from this, right? I quit, because there was a lot of expectation there. If I had not been any good, it would have been a lot easier. I could have just said, I quit, and they would have been like, yeah, fine, just, who are you? Just go, yeah. But that was not the case. So what I ended up doing is I came up with and planned out and carried out a fake injury. I still remember, like, I was stretching during practice, and I was like, I can't stand this. Like, doesn't feel good in here for me. I don't want to keep playing. Oh, I could do this. And so I came up with this, and I remember it was an away game, and we're riding on the bus, and I'm going through in my head the thing that I'd planned out. I don't remember how I came up with this, because this was pre-internet days, so I don't know exactly how I researched this, but I think I knew that neck injuries were kind of bad, so that's what this came up with. So, playing it all out, opening kickoff, I get the kickoff, I run, and I make sure I get tackled, everybody else, all the other players, get up off the field, run to the sidelines, and I stay on the grass on my back. And the referee comes over and kneels down beside me, and he's like, are you okay? And at that point, I was still like, okay, I don't have to do this. I can just jump up and be like, oh yeah, fine, just like relax, and I don't know. But I didn't. I said, no, my neck feels weird, and I can't feel my arm, like my right arm. I know. So the ref blows the whistle, signals for our coach and trainer to come over. They carry me off on a stretcher. And this was an away game, so somebody called an ambulance. And because it was an away game, my mom was not there, but they called somebody did, to tell her to meet us at the hospital. And I remember sitting on the sideline, and we're waiting for the ambulance, and the other running back, his name was Jeff, comes up and he's like, Petrie, dude, you can't feel your arm? I'm like, nope. And he was pinching the crap out of my arm. He's like, you can't feel that? Nope. What about that? Nope. There were welts up and down my arm from that. And I remember, like, the ambulance came, we get to the hospital, and my mom shows up, and she's like, what happened to your arm? And I was like, oh, that's just some of the guys testing to see if I could feel. Yeah, I don't know what it was I didn't like about the mindset of the game. My mom was almost as distraught about that as the neck injury. So we get at the hospital, do the x-rays, and the doctor comes back with the x-ray results, and he's like, well, we can't find anything wrong. And I was like, oh man, this is it. I was like, I can fool the players, fool my coaches, fool the trainers, fool my mom. I still can't believe I did that. But the doctor, you can't fool a doctor, right? But he was like, but with neck injuries, it can be really hard to tell, and if you do this again, you could be paralyzed. And my mom was like, that's it, you're not playing football anymore. And I was like, darn. And it worked. somehow I was able to get out of this doing this thing that didn't make me feel alive, was kind of a soul-sucking thing, whatever, but still maintain some of that respect, right? And I didn't tell anybody for over 10 years. I think eventually it was eating away at me, right? I lied to all these people, to my mom, to do what I thought I had to do, right? But eventually I did. I told my best friend from high school, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that." I'm like, "I know, I can't believe I did either." And I told my mom, and my mom was like, "Oh, well, yeah, that totally makes sense. You would have felt so much pressure back then, there probably wasn't anything else you could have done." And I was like, where were you back then? And maybe she was there, right? Maybe I just didn't see it, because I'm 15. So then, I'm in college, right? I go to college here, UT, the Plan to Liberal Arts program, hook and horns and all that stuff, and I did really well. Made good grades, but I still didn't know what I wanted to do, right? And so at that point, kind of the expected or respected path, if you liberal arts, make good grades, let's go to law school. So I did that. I went to law school and became a litigation attorney. And I was really good at it, right? I was a good litigation attorney, and I hated it. I remember I didn't like the person that it brought out in me. And I remember right after law school, the first job I was at this big law firm, huge law firm, and about 4 months into the first case I was on, the other side produces all these emails. They printed them out. And one of them, from about 4 months earlier, said, "New attorney on the case, Sean Petrie, total jerk." But it wasn't jerk because there were kids in here. And I was like, that's not who I want to be, right? That's not who I want, what I want to be. But I did know at that point what I wanted to do, right? I did realize at that point, okay, I have this creative side and I want to be a writer, and more specifically, I wanted to be a writer for kids fiction. Unlike at age 15, I was able to say no to that, right? I was able to say, I'm done. I don't want to do practice law anymore. I'm gonna write, and I'm gonna write for kids. And I told my attorney friends that, and I remember all of them, their reaction, and the judge that I had just clerked for, and they were like, no, what do you really want to do? And I was like, no, this is what I want to do. And so I quit, and I took time off to write. And I remember back then my attorney friends would say to me like, oh, let's go out and do something. I'd be like, I'm working on my book. And he was like, oh, but you're just writing. You can do that. And that word "just," right, was a tough thing, because I think it's very indicative of the kind of pressure that you can get to do these things, right? And especially, again, if it's something that you're good at. But for me, I was getting more in touch with sort of what called to my soul, what made me feel more alive or vibrant, and it wasn't law, and it was doing these creative things, right? And I stuck with it. And it was hard, right? As any of you know who are creatives, like, it's a solitary thing, right? Especially as a writer or an artist, you're doing a lot of that alone. When I was playing football, I had a team, literal team, right? When I was a litigation attorney at a big firm, I had a team that I was part of. I didn't have that. But it felt right for me to keep going with that. And luckily for me, Austin has this great kids writing community that I became part of and found a little bit of a place with that. I also back then, this was still around age 30 or so, I did improv. I did comedy improv for a bit, which now that I think about it, I'm like, yeah, maybe acting out that fake injury back then, I had a little of those improv skills. I don't know, but that was a little bit of a community that I became part of as well. And eventually, that led to doing typewriter rodeo right here. And what happened with that was an improv friend of mine, Jody Edgerton, who she and her husband Owen used to live here in Austin for a long time and moved away last year. She was like, there's a maker fair in Austin, like one of those fairs where you do like the do-it-your-own, do-it-yourself crafting, things like that. And she's like, I want to have a booth at the maker fair where we make things with words. I don't know what, we'll make up stories or poems or skits, something like that. We call ourselves the word makers. That's literally what we were. And she also got in touch with a mutual friend, Carrie Ann Holt, who is a children's writer here as well. And Carrie Ann was like, I've got these old typewriters. I could bring those. So she did. And I almost said no to that. I remember the day before the Maker Faire, it was a tough week for me. The day before, my girlfriend and I had broken up, and I'm just like, I don't feel like doing this. And I'll stay home. It'll be fine, whatever. But I didn't. For something I think in me, whether it was like Jody's enthusiasm for it or just maybe a little bit of my own soul was like, just maybe try this out. So I went and I showed up. I was the first one there, and we had a table, and I had a typewriter. It was Carrie's typewriter at the time. And the first customer that came up was this girl who was like 9 or 10 years old, and she was like, what are you doing here? And I was like, I'm not really sure. We had a sign that said the word makers, and I was like, we're making things up. I could write you a story or a poem or a skit, I don't know. And she's like, could you write a haiku about a dragon? I was like, well, sure. And so, and I had to count out the syllables. I'm like, 5, 7, 5. But I was clacking away on the typewriter right there and just writing this poem. And somebody else comes up because they heard the typewriter, and they said, what's going on here? And the little girl was like, they're writing poems on typewriters. It's like, I guess we are. So and there was something in me, and we never planned for that to be more than one day, right? But we were there for a few hours, and something in me like sparked. I was like, oh, I'd read some poetry, but I wasn't a poet. But something clicked, and I was like, oh, I can kind of do this. It's a little bit like improv in some ways, but also it was just being in that moment, looking at this person, whether it's a little girl wanting a haiku about dragons, an adult wanting a poem about like I'm starting a new job or about to lose a job or whatever it is. And being in the moment and producing that and seeing that spark in that interaction, something about that really called to me. But again, it wasn't something that we'd ever planned to do past that one day. But as we were there ended up being 4 of us that day, and we're clacking away, and somebody out there watching us was like, do you guys do this at other events? And we're like, sure, absolutely we do. And then somebody else, as all 4 of us are clacking away, was like, you guys are like a typewriter rodeo. Oh, that's a smart thing. So we wrote that down and registered the domain name that night, right? And after that, it was kind of a slow kind of snowball effect, but it really eventually took off. And it was this thing that I never would have expected. Again, we never planned for it past that one day, but we all said yes and showed up. And there was some spark, both with us and I think with the people that we were producing this art or this poetry for, right? And the things that I've gotten to do with that, like we do this now, we get hired to do this nationwide. Like we're in Austin, Dallas, all over the country. We've gotten to go, we did an event at the Smithsonian in DC. They had an event for us, and they brought out their old typewriters from like wherever they keep them. I imagine like in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, that warehouse thing, like they brought them out. And they were amazing. It was like the typewriter from Murder, She Wrote was in there, the one that the Nancy Drew books were written on, those kind of things. We've gotten to type poems on a beach in Cabo. Like Hilton brought us out there for this grand opening. We're like under this pergola thing. We're like, what? This? We're poets? What are we? What is going on here, right? And we get to do a lot of things that, we go to schools. We do once a year. We go to Dell Children's Hospital, and we'll type poems for the kids, the patients there, and their families. And man, just talk about like a meaningful thing, right? Being able to do that, and the topics that those kids ask for just kind of blow me away, right? And each time it's a scary thing, and I do that, but also each time, not every time, but there's these reactions you get. Sometimes there's like laughs or things, there's high fives, there's hugs, there's tears. People will ask for poems about, I've written poems for people for their wedding vows, right? Things like that. People frame these things. And so it's this really cool thing that I'm now a part of, and it's gone from 4 of us to there's over a dozen of us, right? In Austin, we have poets in Seattle, Boston, and Denver. And so I have this team again now, right? Which is just this amazing thing for me. And for me, like, going back to like what makes you feel more alive, right? When I teach my law students, I tell them, people say do what makes you happy, which is great. I think that's a great thing. But for me, the measurement of that is the physical reaction that you have when you're talking about what you do. So when people used to ask me what I did, I would say like, oh, I'm an attorney. And I would almost apologetically, and my shoulders would hunch over, right? And now people ask me what I do, and I say like, I write, I teach, I'm a typewriter poet, right? And when your shoulders go back, that I think is a great measurement of doing what makes you feel alive. And I'm gonna read this one quote here. This is an attorney friend of mine. She texted me this just a few days ago. She's thinking of switching jobs, and she said, when you're doing a job that doesn't call to you, I think the killer part of that is when you realize there's a personality change within you settling in. Not actual unhappiness, just a new and slightly grayer person settling in. Not grayer in age, but in spark. Someone who just isn't as silly anymore. And I love that. That really encapsulates to me, like, swap out silly for vibrant, right? Doesn't make you as vibrant. Football made me grayer. Not in age, I was 15, right? But in my spark. Being a litigation attorney made me grayer, less vibrant. Now, what I do, I've been lucky enough to kind of align myself with something that makes me feel vibrant, and I'm not bad at, right? I can at least do it. But it's not easy. It is scary every single time, every single poem. Sitting here right now, it's terrifying each time, right? Doing a speech like this, it's scary every time. But I think the key is listening to what calls to you right here and leaning into that fear, right? With a typewriter, I know I'm always going to make mistakes. Speaking, I'm always going to make mistakes. I can't correct those, right? But I still lean into that. And so for me, living vibrant means following what calls to your soul. It might not be typewriter poetry, but whatever it is, following what calls to your soul, even if it scares you. And I think especially if it scares you. Thank you guys so much.
always not only feature a neighbor living their creative life and let them share their story, we also feature a musician, because this is the live music capital of the world, people, and we got to show up for our musicians. And Christabel Lynn, I'm so sorry, I told her the wrong time. So she got here late. But we're going to remedy that. And in fact, we are going to try something. She's kind of agreed, I've worked through intermediaries to warm up on stage with you, creating a poem, and the sound of the violin and the sound of the typewriters will come together and create something new. So Sean, your prompt is today's theme, vibrant.
Vibrant, all right.
Yes, and for those of you who have not met Christabel Lynn yet, she is a New Zealand-born violinist. She made her first solo performance with the Auckland Philharmonic Orchestra at the age of 10. And she has appeared with global orchestras since then. She has a master's degree from Vienna Conservatory in Austria. She is trying to make you look bad, Sean, with all of your degrees, with all of her degrees. She plays tons of stage shows with popular artists too. Names that you've heard include David Ramirez, Magna Carta, Wild Child, Grace Sorensen, and she recently joined Japanese Breakfast. Right? Yeah. She's been nominated for the category of Best Strings in Austin Music Awards 2 years, 23, 24. Please help me welcome to this stage Christabel Lynn.
So this is vibrant for everyone. Listen to those notes, musical works of art. Follow the sound, follow your heart. What makes you sing? What makes you thrive? What stirs the fear? Makes you feel alive. We all have our own, vanilla to Cherry Garcia. What is it that calls? That whispering idea. Listen to those notes. We're all works of art. Follow that call. Follow your heart.
I see 2 questions here. We'll go with the first hand I saw.
What advice would you give to writers wanting to get more involved in the writing community in Austin?
Okay. What advice would you give writers who want to be more involved in this city's writing community?
Yeah, that's a great question because, I mean, we're lucky to be in Austin, right? It has such a great writing community. So I think looking for different events like this, meet people here, talk to people, raise your hand right now, you who just did it. Yeah, this person is a writer. If you're a writer, go talk to her after, that's one way to do it, right? There are great places like Book People has events, look on their website, go to those, meet people there. The specific type of writing that you might want to do, like I knew I wanted to do children's writing. There's a chapter of the SCBWI, Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, here in Austin. They meet once a month. That was the community that I became part of. And look for other events that are going on, I think is a great way to do it. Yeah. One thing you might also do is look at Ben's shirt. No. The public library here, there's lots of events here. Actually, woohoo! The library is awesome. I love this space. I love this venue, the whole community that it builds. They're having on next Saturday, June 1st, a kids block party, but it's a community-wide event. We're gonna be typing poems there, the typewriter ready, so I'll be there. So go to check out the library, yeah. Cool.
All right, I'll throw in one more, which is the Texas Book Festival.
Oh yeah, the book festival is great.
Which takes up all of Congress Avenue, or most of it, and you meet writers from around the country, and it's one of the best national events for writers out there.
And the Writing Barn.
The Writing Barn, that's another. Okay, so what's your name? Natalie.
Oh, yeah.
If you have more suggestions for Natalie, go to Natalie immediately after the event. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I was pointing behind you, but it looked like I was pointing at you.
Oh, my arm. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Question for you. When you're typing, are you thinking it through, or just I'm just interested about the creative process.
Yeah.
Are you thinking, Duran, what did he write, or did it just come like it's just stream of consciousness?
All right. When you're typing, what happens in your brain? Is it stream of consciousness? Is it like hard? What is it?
Oh, that's a great question. I would love to hook up one of those, like, whatever the things are that measure your brain. So, what I found is whenever I get a topic, well, it's like this, right? I get a topic from Shannon, right? And I've got less than a minute while Ben introduces me. I can't overthink it. So I have to go with the first thing that pops into my head and trust in that. We teach writing workshops for kids, and we'll have them do that and just like think of this as your first draft. And sometimes the weirder the better. So we tell them, like, the phrase "keep Austin weird." If a weird thing pops into your head for at least the first draft, go with that and trust it. Some of my favorite poems, like we have a book of poems with our stories in them, and some of the ones that I love the most are ones that this idea or topic or just phrase popped into my head. And I was like, I have no idea what this means or where I'm going to go with this, but I trusted it and did it. There's a poem in here, like somebody asked for one about they and their partner were kind of splitting, and the phrase binary stars pops into my head. I'm like, I'm not sure I know what those are. And but I went with it, and it's one of my favorite poems I've ever written. So I would say, like, it's in there. The other thing I would say that I love about what we do, but it's also terrifying, is I'll do an event and somebody will say, like, can I have a poem about coffee? Sure. Write a poem about coffee. The next person, can I have a poem about coffee? Okay, sure. Fine. Third person, I have a poem about coffee. I'm like, and you would think that the well would run dry, right? But it doesn't. There's always something there, and I love that. So trust in that, too.
All right, I promised down here.
Oh, yeah, you did, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for this. I'm like on the verge of inspiration tears, which is so I've been reading a lot of children's books lately, and I'm always curious about what inspires children's stories and writing for children. Do you have any things that spark your inspiration for children's literature?
Okay, so what inspires children's stories specifically?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've often gone back on that because when I switched from law into writing for kids, and my lawyer friends were like, no, what do you really want to do? And then it was like, well, why aren't you writing for adults, right? So part of that is I think kids are so receptive and so excited about different stories, and I think we need stories for that. In terms of what to write, like I think it's just, for me, it's been more like what calls to you. What do you feel like you have to share? Not that's going to be something that would sell. I think when you try and think of it in terms of like, oh, I'm going to write the next, bestseller book, whatever, that, in my experience and my writer friends' experience, never works. But what is it that calls to you, right? What kind of passion? And so for me, I have a book of, like, it ended up being a book of poems for kids. The number one topic, by the way, what do you think the number one topic we get for poem requests is? Dinosaurs. Close to dinosaurs, it's pets. So a book of poems about pets, like, and it's a kid's book. I'm writing right now a book that actually is based on that story of doing the fake injury, right? Because I feel like for some kids that could resonate. And even the bigger picture of doing the thing that everybody expects you to do. And when you're good at it, but what do you do when that's not you, right? So whatever calls to you, I think, is great.